Hello and welcome to my video on creating an embossed style design in EmbroideryWare. I already have EmbroideryWare open on my screen and I've already created a square and I've imported the letter L from a font file, which actually is just Arial, and I've enlarged it and I've centered the L within the square. For the square I just used the simple line tool up here at the top and just drew it. I have a 4x4 hoop, and this will be just slightly smaller than 4x4, so it will stitch out just fine in a 4x4 hoop. And you'll see over on the side I've got my two graphic objects over here, the square and the L. That's all I've done at this point. This is all very basic things that are available in other videos, so I'm not going to go over how to do this. The first thing we need to do in order to create an embossed design is know what an embossed design is. The embossed design, we do not actually stitch the L portion. That is left undone. Everything in the background gets a very loose fill, which holds down the nap of something like a towel, creating kind of a raised area where the letter is. I've chosen the letter L just because it's a very simple letter. If you're doing letters that have holes in them, such as P or an R, A, B, D, those letters, you'll need to go further with creating a hole. And I do have another video on how to create the hole, but we are going to do that in this design because we'll need to in order to create our embossed design. So I've got my square up here and I've got my L. And what I need to do is I need to duplicate both of those. So I'm going to select them and I'm going to go up to my edit menu and I'm going to click on duplicate. And in a second we'll see our duplicates over here. And the next step to that is we need to create a hole in the square in the shape of an L. So leaving my two selected here, I've got a square selected and an L selected. It doesn't matter which one, they're both the same thing. I'm going to now create the L-shaped hole in the square. So I'm going to come up to my menu and I'm going to select Add Hole, now that I've already got those two selected when I did that. And down here at the bottom you'll see instructions. And it says to click on the curve to add the hole to, or I can use the thumbnails over here. I've just gotten in the habit of using the graphics on the screen. So I want to add the L-shaped hole to the square. So I click the square first because that's what I'm adding the hole to. So I'm going to go ahead and click the point right there. It doesn't matter which one. Then I'm going to come down here and read my instructions, and it says to click on the hole curve to add. So I want to add the L to the square. So I click on one of the points of the L. And in just a second, you'll see I have now lost an L and I have a square here. I'm not sure why this isn't showing the graphic of the L in here, but this is the one. If I were to unselect this, you'll see everything that is selected turns red. If I select that one, the L and the square turn red, so that's how I know that that's the correct one to work with. If I were just to click this upper one, only that square is selected. So I'm going to select the one where it's all together. And just for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to move that one up in the list so I know where it is, because that's the one I'm going to work with first. The next thing we need to do is we need to add some fill to this. So we're going to come down here with that one selected. We have everything selected here. And I'm going to add some fill. So I'm going to come down to the stitches and I'm going to select fill from my list right here. And then I'm going to do some changes to my settings here. In playing with this, I've kind of figured out some minimums and maximums here. For the length, you want to definitely have it less than 25. I'm going to choose 18 here. And then we're going to come up in the list And we need to change our spacing because we don't want it to be this really solid fill up here. We want it to be kind of open. We'll be able to see your fabric through that some. So I've kind of come up with that I want to use a 13. You'll want to use something less than 15. Now I have not stitched out a 13, so you're going to have to play with this a little bit. And we're going to change the max to about a 20 because we don't want these lines to be too far apart. Otherwise, what happens is your terry cloth on your towel will start to kind of pull through between where the layers of stitching are. So we have the spacing at 13 and the most it will be is 20. And then we need to come up here and we need to change our angle. And we want we're going to have two copies of this. One is going to go diagonally this way, the other is going to go diagonally this way. So the first one I'm going to do is 135. And that makes it a diagonal. And I'm just going to double check and make sure I have all of my settings here the way I want them, and I do. I'm not going to do it at this point, but you will, well, we might as well. We'll go ahead and add, we want to add a lock stitch to this, just so that nothing unravels, especially with such a loose fill. Now that we have all of those settings in there, we're going to duplicate this so we don't have to do that all again. So it is selected. I'll come up here to edit and I'll click duplicate. And in a second, we'll have another one. And all we have to do at that point is go in here and we need to change our angle. And we want the opposite of 135, which is 45. So I'm going to, I just hit the enter key and that applied that. And just give it a quick look and make sure everything else looks good, and it does. The next thing we need to do is we need to order the fill so that we don't have a bunch of odd jumping around in how it fills, because one of these will kind of technically be your underlay, but it's going to show. So we want to make sure that we don't have any of these odd little lines that come in through here. So we're going to be very careful in our ordering, and you'll have to bear with me. This is something I'm not really versed at doing yet. I'm going to go ahead and move this set up to the top here, and we'll go ahead and do our first one. And to do the ordering, we need to select the one we want to work with, and we're going to edit the fill order, and it says auto here. If you click on that, you'll get a box. Click on the box and it will allow you to edit. First thing you need to do is you need to change it to manual and tell it no, because we don't want to save what the program has decided for us. We're going to change it ourselves. So click no, and hopefully this meshes with what I've already done when I kind of investigated this. We're going to figure out the best way to go around this design. What we don't want to do is have jumps, and we don't want to have any areas where it stitches over the top of any of these other stitches. I'm going to try starting at 0, and then I'm going to go to section 1, then I'm going to do section 3, and then I'm going to do section 2. So I need to change this order because right now it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be jumping around, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and move number 3 up just by clicking it and using the up arrow to move it. So now I have 0, 1, 3, 2, which is what I thought I had wanted. And we're going to click update. That actually will change this order permanently. If you don't do that, it will kind of revert on itself. And because I find it hard to see this aqua color, I'm going to click on the first one in the list and just click update again, and that will bring it back to the colors that it was. Once we do this, now we need to kind of figure out where all of these sections are going to go from one to another. So this one will start in this corner, and that's why I selected that one. I could have done it up here too, but it needs to go around, basically around the circle. So it starts in the corner and it ends out here. That's good. Then it's going to start the next section here, which is good, and it's going to end up here. Now, these little buttons over here will allow you to change the directions that things stitch. Now, that one just put the start up here. Well, I don't want that to happen because my ending is here. So we'll just play around with it, and that put the start over here, so that definitely isn't going to work for us. And when I change that one, now I have my start up here. Well, now I've got to go from here to here, so that's not going to work for me either. So just having it the way it was defaulted to works nicely. The section 0 ends right here where the red E is, and the green S here is where section 1 starts. All of these are color coded. The S is where it starts, the E is where it ends. So then we follow this up and it ends here. Well, there's nothing we can do about that, but we're going to be changing the way 3 stitches. Right now it starts here and ends here. Well, that puts us into a corner. And so what we'll do is we'll come down here to 3, and I'm going to put the start point over here, and hopefully we'll get the end point over here. So we'll go to 3, and there's the start point where I want it, but the end point is here. So let's do some other playing here and see what we get. There's what we want right there. The end point is here, but the start point is here, but now we have a jump stitch from the end of section 1 up to the start of section 3. So we are going to put a start path to tell the machine, I don't want you to jump from here to here or stitch across there. I want you to go where I tell you to. So we'll come over here in the list here, and for number 3, we want to add a start path. So we want to tell the machine, I want you to start number 3 following the path that I give you. So I click add, and that goes away, but you are still active doing something. So section 1 ends right here where my mouse pointer is. I'm going to click my mouse, and you'll see I've got a red line attached now. I'm going to follow exactly that line that is already there. I don't want it skewed off like that. I don't want it over here. I want it right directly on top of. So you can't even really see it. This will make that start path stitch exactly where that other line already is. And actually, I think that's a black line for section 2. So it's not actually stitched yet. So section 2 will stitch right over the top of that. I clicked my left mouse button to add a point there, and it's still connected. And I wanted to come right over here, and then I'm going to click again, and that releases it. And now it's where I want it to be. So I'm going to right click to tell the program that I am done drawing that path. Just the right click of the mouse button will end that. And you'll see I no longer have a jump from over here to up here. It's now following this little path right here. And it's okay if it goes around the outside because we're going to cover that. So now we have section 3 starting here, coming over here, and ending here. Well, section 2 ends here. And it starts down here. Well, that's not what we want because now it would jump from here all the way down to here, and we don't want that to happen. So section 2, we need to change that around also and hopefully get start here and end here. So let's see what we get. Okay, well that put the start over here. That's close. And let's just keep playing. Okay, now we have the start where we want it and the end is okay. I've already played with this a little bit and already determined that that is probably going to be the best decision for this. And let's remember that this section 2 is our last section, and it ends right at this very lower right corner of the L. That will be important when we go to order the other section of this. So now that we are done, all we need to do is close this, and that will apply all of those changes. We're going to unselect that graphic, and we're going to go to the next one, which is the opposite direction. We'll come over here and we'll change this to manual, just like we did on the other. And we don't want to save those changes that it's made. Now remember, our previous graphic ended right here. So we need to get, whatever we do, we need to get from this point to where we start our stitching on this one. Or you can change the color of your graphic up here, and that will make it a separate color stop, which will make your machine stop, and that will allow it to move to a different area. In playing with this earlier, I'm going to not bore you with me trying to figure this out. I've already pre-figured out what I think I need to do. I'm going to just reorder this into the order that it should go. And I figured out that 2 and then 0 and then 1 and then number 5 and then number 4 and then number 3. I'm going to go ahead and update that before I do anything else, and then I'm just going to do that so that I get my colors back so you can see better. We do still have some work to do on the directions that these stitch, because you see that there's jumps all over the place. So section 2, we need to change. We're going to start here, and remember our previous graphic ended here. And so I decided section 2 or section 4 would be the best place to start. That's how I kind of figured this out. Okay, if I have this set this way, my start point is right here, and the end point of the previous one was right there, which works out just perfectly because we're going to end up covering up this area between the embossed area, or the fill area, and the part that's not stitched. This will be covered up, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Then for 0, we're going to be coming this way. For 0, we're ending here and the start is here, so we need to change that to try to get our start point to be here. It's not going to be here in the middle. We already kind of know that. So we're going to work with this, and I've already decided that if I reverse both of these, it works the best. And you'll see that there is an awkward little line. I'm going to come back and fix all those once I have the order worked out here. So section 1, I came up with that needed to be reversed, and I'll put that back the way it was. If this is this way, you'll see I haven't changed 0. It's going to start here and it's going to end here. What I would like to try to do is have it start over here if I can. Then my line will just go right up this outside, which is going to be covered and it won't show. So I've got that one forward, and if I reverse this one, you'll see my start point is right here, which works out just perfectly. So section 5 is over here, and you'll see that section 1 ends right here. So we want to try to get it, section 5, to start here if we can. That's the object. Let's see what I came up with. I know I have these all written down and I'm working off my notes. I left that one forward and I hit that one reverse, and that put my start point, my end point for section 1 here, and my start point for section 5 here, which is perfect. That does put me in the corner over here for the ending section 5, but that's okay. Section 4 is going to stitch next, and that will come right down here, right along the edge, not a problem. So section 4 right now starts way down here and works this way. Well, if we just reverse that, it should work out just nicely. So section 4, I'm going to reverse it. Now that put everything over here, which we don't want, and I'm going to reverse the start end direction, which puts my start here and my end here. So it's going to stitch all that, come back down here, and end here. And then section 3 is the only section, this little purple section is the only section we have left. But now I've ended over here. Well, that wasn't something that I could avoid. So I'm going to reverse both of these and kind of get the lesser of two evils here. And I've ended here with my section 4, and that puts the beginning of section 3 right here, and it will end over here, and that's okay. We'll just need to add some start paths in here to correct those so that they're not going, because all of these are going to show where they cross that gap and it will look funny. So we'll start with adding our start paths. And remember, we needed to add a path for the previous graphic to start on this one. It's either that or we need to change our color so that it forces a stop by the machine so that it will jump to another area. So we need a start path for number 2. So I'm going to click add here. And we know that the previous graphic started here. So we just need to click it there and just follow right up there. And it probably would be okay, but I just like the assurance of knowing I've put it in and I know it's going to be right. And I clicked here and I clicked here to add my line, and then I right clicked to set it. Then we know that 0 also needs a fix here. We need to end here and we need to start here, and it crosses over. So we're going to follow right along this very last line that it stitched, or I could jump over here and follow that one. So I'm going to add a start path to 0, and now it's ready for me to draw, and I'm going to line it up nicely here, and I'm going to come right down the previously stitched line, so it's going to back up on itself. And then I can come right over here. I'm just assuring myself that it's going to come right over to that very first spot that I wanted to stitch. And then right click, and you'll see that that funny line is gone. That works out nicely. This area is not going to be a problem. And this won't be a problem. Where it ends on 5 and goes to 4 isn't going to be a problem. But when 4 ends, 3 starts up here, and it crosses over here, so we're going to want to fix that one. So section 3 needs a start path to it. So we'll click add, and I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to make sure, this is going to be kind of tricky on some of these, I want to make sure that I line that up nicely. And I'm kind of going by is my dot on the line, and there it is. And we'll know if it's not correct when I right click that. And apparently it's not. So I picked the wrong spot. It's actually down here where it ends apparently. So not a problem. We'll just delete that one and we'll start over. Add again, and we'll come down here. What I did before is I clicked this one. I'm going to click this one and come up. And this one you can actually see where the line is, which is nice. There we go. Now I have that back stitching right over the top of itself, and then it's going to stitch all of this and come right back over here. So my ending point for all of this is going to be here. So now that I have my start paths and I've got everything all cleaned up, I can close this. And really the only thing that is left to do is to do some kind of an outline for the L and for the box. You can do whatever you'd like. I have found that satin seems to be what is commercially available, so that's what I'm going to do. I would probably recommend, for the most part, drawing your own satin lines rather than using the add stitches to line. I'm just going to add stitches to line for right now. Especially for your letters like an A that has a tight point in it or something like that. You'll want to do that so that the satin is nice and even. To do this, however, I'm just going to come down here, and I've decided my stitch type for that box is going to be satin. And then you want, notice over here, the satin doesn't meet up with itself. There's a way to correct that, and it's right here where it says closed. You're going to change that to true, and when I change this to true, watch this corner change. You'll see that it filled it in and joined it together. Then the only other thing we need to do is, and if you want to change your satin spacing, the default is 4. I've been using 3.5, which works nicely for me. You can change your width, you can change your spacing, which is the density of that. The only thing we need to do at this point is to finish the L. And I'm just going to do exactly the same thing. Again, probably would be better to go through and add a proper satin stitch around here rather than doing this and actually draw the satin as a satin column. And again, we need to close the gap. So I'm going to close that. And I had 3.5 for the other one, so we'll add 3.5 to this one. And that really is about it. You'll need to possibly play around with the spacing on this. My first one that I did was not close enough, and the little loops of the terry cloth after it was rubbed a little bit started to kind of poke through. So you want this dense enough so that it keeps all that terry cloth down, so it's not going to come up as it's used or as it's washed. So just play around with those settings. If we come up with something that seems to be working well for everybody, I will note that in the comments. I'll show you what this looks like in 3D. Let's kind of change some colors around here really quick too, just so that you can differentiate what's going. Picked a blue with a blue. There we go. This way you'll be able to see things. Typically when you stitch this out, you want to do all of this in a matching color or a similar tone to the fabric that you're stitching on so that this kind of disappears. What you're looking for with this technique is for the part that you're not stitching to really stand out. This is all just here to hold everything down. You can certainly do whatever you'd like, do it in a contrasting color if you'd like. That's totally up to you. And here's what it looks like when it's all stitched out in the 3D visual. You see how open this is. You'll be able to see your fabric where all of these little white squares are. The crisscross lines are the thread and the stitching. So that's really about all there is to doing this. It's not difficult. Probably the most difficult part is just ordering this, and that's something, if you're doing any kind of fill design, you're going to be doing that anyway. So this might be an easy way to ease yourself into that if you're new to the program. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have gotten some inspiration from it to try something a little different. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me.